All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get really technical, so hold on to your seats and bear with me. Right, by show of hands, who's heard of blockchain? Right, none of you can come and find me and ask me questions after this presentation. Thank you. Right, so I'm going to run through a few things. So what is it? Because this confused me for a long time. Like, we've heard it, and it's usually synonymous with cryptocurrency. Maybe you've heard of Ethereum, right? But what really is blockchain? What is behind the technology? How does it work? How's it going to change our market? And how's it going to safeguard data? Right, so I've used my Photoshop skills, and I'm going to really break it down for you. So essentially, the key thing to note is decentralization. Imagine you as the audience are acting as a global network, and you're accessing data that you've never been able to access before without a central authority. Right, Alex, mate, you've just marketed my new line of protein shakes, right? And I need to pay you some money for that Instagram post you did, which was great, by the way. So now, essentially, the first question we need to consider is, do I have the money? Do I have the money that I say I have? So the way that we check this is you in the audience, I want you to imagine you're in this network and you're acting as nodes, right? You need to be verifying that information. So it's verified by a majority consensus. So essentially, once it's reached that consensus, the block is added to the chain. This is now permanent. It cannot be undone. So you guys have agreed that I do, in fact, have the cash and dollar to give to Alex, right? So after that consensus is reached, it is now payday, right? But what's this thing about cryptography and a key, right? So I give you a public key as the nodes or the network. You access the information, and he gets the private key and the cryptography and accesses that payment. Good. Kushti, right. So what happens now? This technology is not limited to payments. It's not limited to Ethereum and blockchain, right? Cryptocurrency. But how does it really affect our data? What's it going to change in our industry? Right, let's have a look at distributed. So theoretically, this allows for an infinite number of nodes to take part in a network, building trust over time. So Amazon uses a private network with AWS, and blockchain Ethereum is open to anybody to access this information and contribute to it. So distribution, it's a team player. It allows infinite participants. It's scalable. Typically, brute force network attacks wouldn't work with blockchain. It's really, really secure. So it protects from cyber fraud, tampering. So blockchain allows four trustless parties to exchange information. Typically, a central authority like banks would come and check that information. However, it can be verified by you guys, the nodes, anybody in the network. So it's distributed to many nodes, synchronizing the ledger through consensus. It allows trustless parties to believe that the information that they are displaying is real and not fake. So duplicated payments. So think about CVs, digital contracts, rights to work. Trust is increased over time by shared processes. It creates immutable records of transactions. Digital transactions couldn't have happened without central authority managing them. So banks become redundant, right? So once it's shared and agreed across the network, it is impossible to undo, right? It increases over time. So we can explore this chain once that information is available. Work history, supply chains, distribution, anything to do with compliance. This is relevant to you guys. Data is important. So we have a reduction in centralized monopolies. What does this mean? The middlemen are cut out, right? So this removes costs, distributed networks. It finds economies of scale. So without centralized investment. So I want you to consider the idea of competition, right? So this increases the market. It opens the market again. We've all been players in the market currently, but we can become the market with blockchain, theoretically. So it puts pressures on participants to become more efficient. I implore you to become more efficient as agencies. So how do you handle your data currently? So I want you to consider something called the Gartner hype cycle. I didn't put up there because it looks a bit complicated. So consider something like an innovation trigger, peak of inflated expectation, trough of disillusionment, which is where blockchain is now. But it might reach something else that we might consider to be productivity. And then consider this. Mr. Moore, who knows more than most, right? This guy said that technology would increase doubly every year and will be more accessible. Blockchain could reach this peak. We don't know. But over time, I want you to consider its application in the recruitment industry. But beyond that, do you think the implication of blockchain could change our industry so much so that we become not only players in the market, we become the market? If banks are redundant, does that mean our industry is going to become redundant with this technology? Right, guys, you've been amazing. Cheers for having me.